the complete collapse of the legacy translation memory standard, and the rise of governed, contextual AI. The $58 billion data sovereignty market rewriting global compliance, and the explosive evolution of the traditional human translator into a high-stakes AI security engineer. If you're trying to keep up with the shifting models, you already know the industry moves at lightning speed. Welcome to Locanuku.com, localization news you can use. Your daily dose of localization know-how. News for Tuesday, March 17th, 2026. We are skipping the pleasantries today because everything you know about translation memory is officially dead. And the machine translation engines you have trusted for years might actually be built on the biggest digital heist in history. It is entirely over for the TMX worldview. For 2 solid decades, the localization industry treated language like this giant bucket of isolated reusable sentence pairs. You get a new document, you run it against a database, look for your 80% fuzzy match, and you just move on. That was the Translation Memory Exchange Format, or TMX. But if you look at industry leaders like WeLocalize CEO Paul Carr and analyst R. Lommel, they are actively pointing out that this legacy format is actually choking operations. It is a severe bottleneck now. Language is not binary, and it certainly isn't just a database of segment-level reuse. The fundamental flaw with TMX is that it completely strips away the surrounding reality of the text. So the new standard that is completely replacing it is governed contextual knowledge. Platforms like Blacklake are really championing this right now. The operational question for a localization manager isn't whether they have a 90% match in their database anymore. Nobody cares about that. The question is, what is the precise contextual content required for this specific workflow, for this specific target audience? Let's visualize how big of a shift this really is. Operating on legacy TMX is like trying to paint a massive, intricate mural, but you are only allowed to look through a tiny keyhole. You might know the speck of paint you are looking at is blue, but is it the sky, the ocean, or someone's eye? You have absolutely no context. Contextual knowledge, on the other hand, is having the entire wall floodlit, seeing every stroke, and knowing exactly how the surrounding colors influence the one you are about to paint. That need for context is driving a massive total rebellion against walled gardens. For years, enterprise buyers were forced into these highly restrictive vendor ecosystems. You had to buy your translation management system, your machine translation engine, and your language services all from one single, locked-in provider. You were totally trapped. But buyers are smashing those walls down now. They are demanding open architecture. They want to mix and match native multilingual capabilities directly within their own content management systems, tailoring the tech stack to their exact infrastructure needs. And if these walled gardens are falling and enterprises are demanding open architecture, that completely changes the software development game. These platforms can't just offer clunky third-party plugins anymore. They have to embed the AI directly into the client's existing workflow, and that is triggering an absolute arms race among developers. Localization platforms are deploying the most aggressive AI workflows we have ever seen just to stay relevant. The speed of deployment is staggering. What we are seeing in the tech space are deep, native integrations that fundamentally alter how linguistic data moves through a corporate network. Take phrase version 26.5, for instance. The engineering behind this update is fascinating. They rolled out an early access program specifically for language-specific style guides. But the massive shift here is their introduction of reusable AI profiles for automated pass-fail quality evaluation at the segment level. Instead of a human reviewer spot checking, the AI acts as an automated gatekeeper based on incredibly specific brand parameters. Plus, they integrated phrase language AI directly into Salesforce Service Cloud via Verbis. Let's break down why that Salesforce integration actually matters to the end user. Previously, say a customer success manager in Madrid gets an urgent ticket in Korean. They had to copy the text, open a new tab for a translation tool, draft their answer, translate it back, and paste it into the CRM. So much friction. Now the LLM, or large language model, the core neural network generating the text, sits directly inside the chat interface, routing the text through brand-specific linguistic guardrails in milliseconds. Customer support functions multilingually without ever leaving their native environment. GlobalLink is moving in the exact same direction with their new GL Web Studio. They've completely rebuilt their batch workflows to handle these massive AI pipelines. They added the ability to download translated PDFs directly, which saves massive desktop publishing time. And they upgraded their reporting tools to specifically monitor human AI post-editing workflows. It is all about giving managers pipeline visibility and giving linguists in-context editing. They can actually see the digital real estate they are translating for. Developer ecosystems are tightening up right alongside them. Discourse is formalizing native AI localization documentation for forum communities, bringing it right to the community level. XTM International is pushing hard on parallel localization, bringing software development and translation together using visual context loops. DeepL just launched massive enterprise APIs to handle bulk institutional loads, and MemoQ dropped a huge AI productivity update. Now, on one hand, you have to push back and ask the tough questions. With all of these platforms automating quality evaluations, setting up AI pass-fail gates, and natively integrating LLMs into every single text box, are we just building a faster assembly line for mediocre content? That is the core anxiety of the entire industry right now. Companies are implementing these tools to cut costs and reduce headcount. If the whole point is to save money, nobody is going to pay a human to slowly read and verify the AI output. Are we just pumping out perfectly formatted garbage at the speed of light? On the other hand, you have to look at the architecture being built. These are not fire and forget speed tools. What XTM, Phrase, and GlobalLink are building are strategic management pipelines. They are heavily engineered ecosystems that require intense human oversight at the architectural level. You cannot run an automated QA profile without a highly skilled language professional defining the exact parameters of what quality even means for that specific brand. The AI is doing the heavy lifting, sure, but humans are setting the coordinates. But you can't have an AI-driven assembly line without asking where the raw materials came from, and more importantly, who legally owns those materials. The data feeding these LLMs has to come from somewhere, which triggers the massive ethical reckoning currently shaking this industry. The conversation has completely shifted over the last year. We went from panicking over whether AI will replace us to demanding to know how these foundational models were built in the first place. The localization industry is actively mirroring the generative AI art controversy, but with far less public outrage. Think about it like this. Imagine a master architect spends decades perfecting a unique, structurally flawless bridge design. Then a massive tech conglomerate snaps a photo, reverse engineers the blueprints, and starts 3D printing cheap replicas worldwide without ever crediting or compensating the original designer. That is brutal, but that is effectively what major engines like Google Translate and DeepL did. They trained their foundational models by scraping millions of highly nuanced professional translations without consent or compensation. And that unconsented scraping is precisely why the concept of data sovereignty has exploded from a niche legal term into a $58 billion market. Data sovereignty is the principle that digital data is subject strictly to the laws and governance structures of the country where the physical servers are located. If a server is in Frankfurt, it is governed by GDPR. If it is in Virginia, it falls under U.S. jurisdiction, which means if you are translating highly sensitive documents, you cannot just ping a random cloud server. The cross-border compliance risks are catastrophic. If you are a top-tier aerospace firm designing next-generation thrusters, and a junior engineer drops a confidential schematic description into a public machine translation tool, that proprietary data is now training the public model. You have breached confidentiality, and if it crossed borders, you violated international data laws. So the market is scrambling to build sovereign solutions. We are seeing platforms launching specifically to physically geofence this AI infrastructure. Language Intelligence Corporation, a Canadian indigenous-owned provider, just launched a platform called Fluent. It is explicitly engineered for strict government compliance, ensuring secure, localized AI translation that never leaves the required legal jurisdiction. Language Weaver is tackling this from the legal sector side. integrating directly with the iManage work document system. That integration allows massive law firms to keep sensitive M&A localization strictly internal, which is absolutely mandatory for them. The LLM processes the translation within the firm's secure ecosystem, so the data never touches the public internet. Furthermore, RWS is aggressively expanding on this front, shifting away from being viewed as just a traditional language service provider. They are positioning themselves as a fully integrated language AI platform because in the enterprise space today, owning the secure infrastructure is literally the only way to win contracts. When you have billions of dollars in international legal compliance on the line, regulatory bodies are forced to step in and officially rewrite the rulebook. We are seeing the public sector completely mature in how it handles artificial intelligence, and it is fundamentally changing what it means to be a language professional. The United Nations International Court of Justice in The Hague, the highest court in the world, is actively hiring for a brand new role, a translation technologist. They aren't just looking for someone who speaks French and English. They want a technologist to lead their AI adoption strategy, manage complex prompt engineering, which is the highly technical skill of writing precise instructions to guide AI output, and safely integrate LLMs into highly sensitive legal workflows. At the same time, the European Commission is actively bringing in translation students to evaluate AI language models across the entire EU landscape, just to measure output reliability. And this formalization at the institutional level triggers a massive domino effect across global business standards. We are watching ISO certifications shift in real time to adapt to this technology. ISO 17100, which has been the foundational quality standard for translation services for years, is actively evolving to account for AI-augmented workflows and post-editing requirements. It goes way beyond just translation quality standards. ISO 27001, which governs strict information security, used to be a nice-to-have badge for localization vendors. Now it is a mandatory, non-negotiable requirement for Western providers trying to enter Asian markets. If you cannot prove your AI supply chain is secure, you do not do business, period. Then you look at highly regulated specialized sectors like life sciences. A European provider named Cyclopea just achieved ISO 13485 certification. That is the globally recognized golden ticket for the medical device industry, proving a company has the rigorous quality management systems required to handle medical contracts. In medical localization, an AI hallucination, which is when a model confidently generates false or illogical information, doesn't just result in a clunky menu translation at a restaurant. If an AI misinterprets the allergy warnings on a pediatric defibrillator manual, it is literally a matter of life and death. Think about the stakes there for a second. With all these physical server security standards, complex prompt engineering requirements, and medical compliance mandates, the job description has completely transformed. We are watching the traditional translator evolve into a language security engineer. If you follow the European Union's current digital policy discussions, they are intensely focused on language access reliability. In the age of generative AI, the human professional is the final firewall. They are the ultimate security mechanism that guarantees the output is legally, technically, and culturally safe before it hits the real world. So, if the machines are handling the bulk data processing, the massive translation memories, and the raw compliance filtering, the human is moving exclusively into high-stakes, nuanced, and culturally sensitive environments. We are abandoning bulk processing for highly specialized expertise, and businesses are completely restructuring to support this new human experience. BureauWorks is preparing a massive corporate rebrand, specifically focused on destroying the high-anxiety, isolated freelance model that has plagued the industry for decades. The old vendor model was terrible. It was like taking your entire life savings in an unmarked envelope, handing it to a stranger at a train station, and blindly hoping it reaches your bank account. You had no visibility. A project manager would send an English file off, pay the invoice, and eventually a Spanish file would show up. You had no idea what tools the vendor used, what struggles the text encountered, or if the linguist actually understood your brand tone. BureauWorks is trying to attach a live, transparent GPS tracker to that process. They want operational efficiency, sure, but they're building transparent, positive feedback loops for translators, business owners, and project managers to actually collaborate. Because as the technology isolates us behind screens and APIs, strategic face-to-face alignment actually becomes our most valuable asset. Look at Scientific hosting an invite-only localization leadership gathering at the Hotel Magdalena in Austin for SXSW. You have AI founders, global media executives, and industry vet Jonas Ryberg, Wada Fahel, and Nick Costin sitting in a room together. They aren't staring at slide decks or pitching software. They are mapping out the trajectory of global content outside the constraints of formal presentations because the technology is moving way too fast for traditional conferences. Face-to-face strategy is vital, but so is structural collaboration at the keyboard level. Collaborative translation is finally becoming a formalized business strategy. Seasoned French to English translator Chris Durbin is hosting a webinar breaking down exactly how language professionals can use collaborative models, cross-revision, and shared responsibility to boost quality while maximizing profitability. It is no longer a solo sport where you lock yourself in a room with a dictionary. And that real-time collaboration is critical when you get into high-wire translation environments like technical subtitling, which is the ultimate stress test for an LLM. CLOB has an upcoming webinar with Aditi Jain focusing exclusively on the strict technical parameters of subtitling. We are talking about rigid character limits per line, reading speed constraints based on frames per second, and exact visual timing. It is a straitjacket. And you have this fierce ongoing debate in the community. When you are translating highly technical content, do you translate the complex English terminology into the target language, or do you leave it in the source text depending on the target audience's technical proficiency? An AI cannot navigate that balance alone. It requires an understanding of readability, screen space, and cultural context. This is exactly why specialized human expertise is being prioritized for cultural preservation projects. A fantastic example just happened with Penguin Random House Peru and the Quechua project. They had a children's bestseller they wanted to translate into Quechua. Instead of running it through a localized machine translation engine to save a few bucks, they deliberately opted for a specialized human linguist. They explicitly prioritize linguistic authenticity and cultural nuance over the speed of machine translation for indigenous languages. They prioritize the human connection over the technical capability. You see the exact same philosophy in humanitarian aid right now. Clear Global, which does incredible work in nonprofit language access, just fully integrated Tarjimly. They are taking Clear Global's massive text and voice data initiatives and combining them directly with Tarjimly's rapid, on-demand volunteer interpretation app. The mechanism there is brilliant. When a humanitarian crisis hits, like an earthquake or a refugee surge, you have this massive data infrastructure supporting real, live humans, providing critical on-the-ground interpretation through mobile devices in real time. It illustrates the ultimate testing ground for all of these technological trends: media localization and real-time communication. This is where the open architecture, the governed AI, the strict security, and the human expertise all have to perform together on a massive global stage. And the global demand for this is just explosive. The latest market data from CSA Research maps out this massive global language services demand across every single region. Media is the ultimate growth driver here. Look at Netflix rapidly scaling its multilingual accessibility features to capture emerging markets, or Keyword Studios appointing brand new global localization leadership specifically to handle their scaling video game and media content pipelines. But as media scales, the AI integration is getting incredibly sophisticated. We are way past the novelty phase of synthetic voices. Voice cloning is where the workflow integration gets wild. Crowdin's dubbing studio is now directly embedding ElevenLabs voice cloning technology right into the translation management system timeline. Let's break down why that is revolutionary for a media pipeline. In the past, if you wanted to dub a corporate training video, you had to translate the script, export a text file, run it through a standalone audio generator, manually tweak the audio pacing, and then drag the file into Premiere Pro to sync the lip flaps. It took hours. Now the AI dubbing sits natively in the core workflow. You adjust the text, and the synthetic audio renders inside the timeline. This allows massive brands to maintain a totally consistent synthetic brand voice across 70 different languages instantly. But this raises an incredibly important question, and it is the center of a fierce industry debate right now. Are studios using these synthetic voices purely as a cost-saving measure to cut corners on voice actors, or are we developing them as essential broadcast-ready tools to reach audiences that wouldn't otherwise get dubbed content? It is a tough balance. Recent industry sessions evaluating the viability of AI dubbing show that these tools are aggressively transitioning from experimental toys into essential pipeline components. And it isn't just pre-recorded media experiencing this shift. Live speech translation is actively entering the everyday corporate meeting workflow. Vasco Electronics just launched Vasco Audience. It is built specifically to provide real-time group translation and live transcription. They are taking live speech translation from a cool novelty you see at a tech expo and turning it into a standard everyday expectation for global enterprise meetings. You walk into a room, speak your native language, and everyone else hears or reads it in theirs seamlessly. Before we dive into our final takeaways, just a quick reminder that you can find more industry foresight and strategy just like this over at locanuq.com. If we connect the dots across everything we are seeing in the tech space this quarter, from the death of TMX and the fall of walled gardens to secure sovereign clouds and real-time voice cloning, the overarching narrative is incredibly clear. This industry has fundamentally shifted. We are no longer talking about adopting AI. We have adopted it. The foundation is poured. We are now entirely in the phase of optimizing it, governing it, and wrapping it in ironclad security and compliance. The language professional is managing the pipelines, ensuring the cultural nuance, setting the AI parameters, and securing the data sovereignty. It is a totally new era, an evolution of the discipline. And that is your daily dose of localization know-how from locanuq.com, localization news you can use.